Hello everyone, RGD here. As you can see, I was able to get Mog through the final stage of Transcendence Part 2. Took a few attempts, hadn't found the winning combination yet. I tried this very team once or twice, changed a couple things around, and thought I had a chance to sit down and do a quick attempt. I thought, didn't expect that it would work out. Turns out it did, so I didn't capture it. But I did want to capture my thoughts, so here we are. On the fight overall, for one, it's always worth mentioning. You can't just come into this stage and try to replicate a team. With the way the Transcendence work, you can only use the characters that you used in the first two stages, so it's not a regular quest in that regard. It's also abnormal in terms of how long it is. The turn requirement is 135. So, unlike most modern fights, you're not going to be able to spend your time spamming skills. You have to use quite a few HP attacks. You want to sprinkle them throughout the fight. If you're even close to capping, you probably want to put an HP attack in there. Even though this run was successful, I would say that I still didn't get the pacing quite right. I think I was over-aggressive, and I had to rely on HP attacks too much toward the end of the fight. You can probably finish this fight with a better turn count and with a little less headache if you can pace your HP attacks better than I did. In Wave 1, there's not a lot to say about the metal drum. I think they're metal drums. Whatever the giant golem robot thingies. Mog and Lightning handled the orb without any trouble. The enemies don't do much that's noteworthy. They have a fair few HP attacks, but they didn't hit very hard. I didn't think. You might find yourself, if they focus on a certain character too much, or if they do too many group HP attacks, or you just find yourself flagging a bit. Go ahead and use one Mog LD if you want, but definitely keep two of them for later. Wave 2, Part 1 is not too hard to handle. With this team, they handle the orb easily. He probably isn't going to act at all. He might get one turn early. Phase 2, after you take the Phoenix down to 0 health, he resurrects himself, as you would expect the Phoenix to do. He also becomes rather tanky. This is where I think you can run into problems. This wave really soaks up your skills. Keep pushing the delay, because although the orb is gone, you don't want him to take a turn. If he takes a turn, he's going to heal himself by a massive amount. And you can't afford for that to happen, especially given how tanky he is. And you're not going to meet the turn requirements if you let him take a turn here. I used the burst when he was about halfway through his second life. I needed that HP damage up effect to finish him off. Wave 3, you feel like Superman when it starts, because with how tanky the Phoenix is toward the end. Ferris' call handles the orb here, and combined with the delays that Lightning and Garland are able to do, you can make Ferris' call last the whole fight. Her LD debuff can be a lifesaver at times. I know it was for me. A quick reminder, what that does is at the end of the enemy's turn, it saps whatever brave they have back down to 0. These things, even with Ferris' debuffs keeping them from doing a lot of damage to you, they'll still gain a bunch of brave in the process. And this keeps that in check. Amiditelian helps by deleting turns. She can apply a bunch of debuffs too, but Ferris is enough to handle it, I believe, if you can keep the delays going strong. The real problem with these parrots is their killer mode, which they activate at certain HP thresholds. When they're in killer mode, anything that would heal you hurts you instead. And that's a big problem when you have a regen like Mog brings. On top of that, lightning is a turn stealer, so the 8 regen / now poison is going to tick extra times for her. And on top of that, it's very easy to forget, but lightning actually has a burst self-heal on her EX. So the first time you use her EX, lightning's going to be at 1. The good news is this effect can't kill you directly, but the bad news is it sets you up for an easy kill by the enemy. All the more reason to not let them have very many turns. I used my summon in the first killer mode phase, because it's earlier in the fight, so that it gives me more breathing room before I'm able to get the delays to stack up. Speaking of summon, I think the choice of summon was actually key. I had been taking Odin, and I think that Leviathan made the difference here. For one, the speed down on the enemy is always helpful. It helps keep them in check. But on top of that, that Brave regen, which you will trigger when killer mode happens, that was able to get me over the line, even though I was having to rely on HP attacks a lot in the last phase. So I think Leviathan was ultimately the key here. After killer mode is over, it only lasts for a certain number of actions. That's when you use one of your saved MOG LDs to bring it back up. But technically there are 3 killer mode phases. The way it worked out, at least in this run, as soon as the second killer mode was over, they activated their 3rd killer mode. So it was basically like one extra long effect. So I wasn't able to heal in between round 2 and round 3, which is just as well because I only had 1 more LD use available anyway. It still wasn't enough because it was enough, but the problem was that the parrots did start getting their turns, and I hadn't finished them off yet. They both did a group HP attack, which meant that when I had the finishing blow ready, I had still taken too much HP damage. I actually had to spend quite a few turns brave attacking just to let the HP regen get me back up to hit that requirement. So I don't know that Cloud's call was necessary. It was more for insurance purposes, and I think I could have gotten away without it, which means you could take a healing call instead. The other thing you might want to do is if you can avoid using an LD earlier in wave 1, then that would do the trick as well. I would also like to take a moment to talk about MOG Parade overall. My objectives in undertaking this project were threefold. For one, I wanted to make sure I got my value out of this character because I had to pity him. I certainly did that. For two, I didn't think anybody else was going to try something like this. Everybody was talking down to this character. Nobody was pulling him. Nobody was talking him up. Everyone was... He was an easy skip, everybody said. Didn't bring much. And I thought, that's not quite fair. I've seen people take some ridiculously outdated characters to modern fights. Everybody has their place. And I thought, you know what? He's not my favorite character, no. Not by any means, but somebody needs to be a champion for this little guy, and I think I'm going to do it. Turns out I'm not the only one who's doing that, so that point is kind of moot anyway. More than anything else, I wanted to improve as a player. And I think that's definitely happened. Taking a character that's not necessarily favored for a given fight's requirements has made me approach team composition and strategy in a way that I haven't had to before, and that stretching has helped me to grow. I think the best example is with calls. I knew that it was a weak point in my game, but no matter how hard, just reading the things that I've been reading and watching what other people were doing was not enough for me to really get my head around how to use calls more effectively. And I definitely have now. I've gone from, well, I don't really know how to use them except for just bring in some extra damage, why not? But here, Ferris, as a call, single-handedly handled the orb. Well, that's not quite fair to say. It's not just her. It wouldn't work if I didn't have a delaying team in play. But still, I'm using a call to handle an orb and not something that's in my main team. That's something I wouldn't have done before. So I can say with confidence that it's mission accomplished as far as that goes. Not to say I don't have more to learn. I certainly do. But now the question is, are the gains that might be out there in terms of what I can learn by continuing to do this project, are they worth the time that it takes? Because for me, it can be a challenge at times to find enough time to sit down and clear one of these fights, even if I'm copying a proven meta team from online that everybody's using. These fights are not short. And when you add to that the extra work to bring a character that is only getting older, this is a gacha game, so power creep is a part of life. And I have to be in a situation and have time where I can sit and capture it on video, and then I have to process that video and get it online. Not to say that those things are a huge time requirement, but as much as gaming might be my hobby, it's a low priority item when it comes to how I spend my time. And I think that overall, it probably is not worth the time going forward. I don't feel like I want to be done with this, and who knows, maybe I'll continue to try to push Mog through, maybe I'll be able to record. But I don't want to oblige myself to it, if that makes sense. I mean, I'm at a stage of life and of life circumstances right now where the main thrust of my channel, which is supposed to be playing the games I grew up with my kids, right? That's my whole deal, my whole shtick. It's barely happening right now. It's proving beyond us right now to get everybody together and sit and do the recordings. And while I still have material I can work with to get a backlog I have to get out there, and I'm struggling to get that out. So an honest, frank assessment tells me that I shouldn't commit to trying to get this out there. Not to say that there can't be more episodes to this if I can get it, but I don't want to commit to it if I can't give it a fair amount of my commitment and attention. I don't think that I can. So this is most likely the last official Mog Parade entry. We'll see if I can get him in a fight and maybe get it recorded. Another thing to consider, I wanted to mention as far as that goes, is not only is there natural power creep and cycles to this game, but Tifa's LD just came out, and we're one BT cycle removed from Cloud of Darkness, and she's followed up by Titus, and these three usher in not just the next step of the natural power creep. It's an extra large step. It's a leap. The nature of DPS and how fights are built for them is changing, which is going to make older units even harder to bring. I look forward to seeing how the other Mog runners are able to get him in here, because I do believe it's going to be possible. But that just makes the prospect, when we talk about the time cost, just makes the prospect all the greater. So that said, I'm definitely glad that I did this. I have improved as a player. I enjoyed doing it. I wish I could do more, but it is what it is. I want to be sure I say thank you for, I guess, listening to me ramble for the past however long it's been, almost 15 minutes here. And You've been following and enjoying the Mog Parade. Thank you for that. I wish I could keep it going for you. But I think this is probably going to be the end of it for now. So thank you, and I will see you around.